I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribe and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth. Let's get into it. If you ever find yourself in a hospital hallway making decisions for a newborn, while the person who promised, "We're in this together," suddenly becomes unreachable, pay attention to that silence. It is not just a bad moment. It is information. The lesson I learned the hard way is simple. Love can be messy, but abandonment is a choice. And when someone shows you they can leave you holding the most fragile responsibility alone, your next move should be about protection, not persuasion. This story is about the night my wife walked away and what I did next. If you've ever watched someone vanish the moment life got hard, stay with me, because this isn't a quick breakup story. This is a hospital hallway, a newborn in the NICU, and a choice that changed everything. If you want more stories with real consequences and real healing like this, share with someone who needs boundaries, and subscribe for more relationship dramas like this one. The night my daughter was born, the hospital smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee, and the air felt too cold for the month of May. We were in St. Louis, in a brick medical center that always seemed to hum, elevators, nurses' shoes, distant intercom calls. My wife, Nia, had been tense for weeks, snapping over small things like the way I folded towels or how long I took to park. I told myself it was a pregnancy. Everybody says pregnancy changes the weather in a marriage. I didn't realize it can also reveal what was already broken. I remember the exact sound of the monitor speeding up when the nurse said, "We're going to move quickly." Nia's eyes widened, and she grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave crescent marks. "Don't let them take her from me," she whispered, like I had authority over biology. I kissed her forehead and lied with confidence. "I won't." I didn't understand then that the first promise I would truly keep that night was not to my wife, but to the child we were about to meet. Our daughter arrived in a rush of controlled panic. A small cry, thin as a string, and then movement, hands, blankets, someone saying, "NICU." I stood up too fast and nearly tipped over. A nurse blocked my path with a gentle palm and a firm voice. "You can see her in a minute. Let the team work." Nia was quiet after that. Not sleepy quiet, gone quiet. Her face turned toward the wall, her eyes fixed on nothing, like she was watching herself from far away. I'm not a doctor. I'm a Metrolink bus mechanic. Grease under the nails. Early mornings, a head full of engine sounds. I fix what can be fixed, and when something cannot be fixed, I still try to make it safer than it was. That night, I tried to approach parenthood the same way. I asked questions. I nodded at instructions. I pretended I wasn't afraid. In the NICU, my daughter looked like a question mark in a clear box, wrapped in wires and careful light. When they finally brought me to her, my legs shook like I had run up too many stairs. Her name wasn't settled yet. Nia and I had argued for months. She wanted something that sounded successful, her word, like we could name our child into a different life. I wanted something that sounded like family. I stood there staring at this tiny face and felt the argument dissolve. I said quietly, "Hello, little one." Her hand flexed inside her mitten like she heard me. The first decision I made that could have gone differently happened before midnight. A nurse offered to call Nia's mother and my sister to sit with us. I hesitated because Nia hated people in our business. She liked control and clean narratives, and the family made things messy. But I looked through the glass at my daughter's steady struggle and thought, privacy is a luxury. Support is survival. I asked the nurse to call them anyway. I told myself Nia would forgive me later. Nia did not forgive anything that night. When I went back to her recovery room, she had her phone angled away from me, her thumb moving fast. She didn't ask about the baby. She didn't ask what the doctors said. She asked, "Did they say she's normal?" The word landed wrong. I stood there holding a plastic cup of ice chips I'd fetched like it was an offering. "She's fighting," I said. "She needs time." Nia's face tightened. "Time costs money," she muttered. I should have heard that sentence for what it was. Instead, I started bargaining with the universe. I told myself Nia was scared, that fear makes people sound ugly, that motherhood would soften her. I told myself a lot of things that were convenient, because the alternative was admitting my wife might not be in a room with me anymore, not emotionally. I sat in a hard hospital chair while she slept and wrote a list on my phone. Call insurance, call work, get diapers, learn NICU schedule. By morning, my sister, Patrice, arrived with her hair wrapped and her eyes already wet. She hugged me without asking permission. "Where's the baby?" she said. "NICU." I answered, and the word felt like gravel. Patrice grabbed my shoulders and looked me in the face the way older sisters do when they need to anchor you. "Are you eating?" she asked. I laughed once, sharp. "I don't even know what day it is." She nodded. "Okay, we're going to fix one thing at a time." Nia's mother arrived later, dressed like she was coming to court. Pressed blouse, careful lipstick, a purse clutched tight. She looked around the room, took in the monitors, then stared at me like I had arranged the whole crisis. "How did this happen?" she demanded. I opened my mouth, then closed it. "Because what do you say? The baby came early? Life is unpredictable." Her eyes slid to Nia, who stayed turned away, and the room filled with quiet that felt accusatory. In the NICU, my daughter's nurse was a woman named Maribel Grant. She was a black woman in her 40s with a neat bun and calm hands, the kind of person whose presence slows panic down. "Talk to her," Maribel told me. "Your voice matters." So I talked. I told my daughter about the sound of my tools clinking in my work bag. I told her about the vinyl records I collected. Old soul albums my father used to play on Saturdays while frying catfish. I promised her I'd teach her the difference between real love and performance. The second decision I made that could have gone differently came 2 days later, when Nia asked me to bring her purse. Her tone was casual, but her eyes refused to meet mine. I brought the purse, and it felt heavier than leather should feel. I saw an envelope inside, creased, already opened, sticking out like it wanted to be found. I didn't look. I told myself I was respecting privacy. But the truth is, I was afraid of what I'd see. I left the purse on the bed and went to the NICU to breathe. On the third day, my phone buzzed while I was washing my hands for the NICU. It was Nia. "I'm leaving." 2 words. No punctuation. My body went cold. I called back immediately, and it rang until voicemail. I texted, "Where are you going?" No reply. I jogged to her room, heart banging in my throat, and found it empty. Not stepped out. Empty. Discharged. Sheet stripped. The little plastic cup of ice chips is still on the tray like a joke. A nurse at the station glanced up at me and frowned. "Sir, are you okay?" My mouth went dry. My wife, I managed. She was here. The nurse checked the computer and then avoided my eyes. "She signed out," she said. "She said you knew." That sentence cracked something in me, because I didn't know. I didn't know a lot of things. I stood there under fluorescent lights, surrounded by people walking with purpose, and realized I had become a man without a partner in the middle of a medical crisis. I found the envelope later, tucked into the diaper bag we'd brought. It wasn't a letter like in movies. It was a torn notebook page with hurried handwriting and a single folded sheet from a lawyer's office. Not divorce papers yet, just separation intent language, like she'd been practicing the idea. Her note said, "I can't do this. I can't be trapped. The baby is sick. This is not the life I chose. Don't call me. I will call when I can." No apology. No name at the end. My hands shook so hard I had to sit on the floor in the hallway, back against the wall. Patrice found me there. She didn't ask questions. She sat beside me and took the paper from my fingers. She read it, and her jaw tightened so hard I thought her teeth might crack. She left you at the hospital. Patrice said, quiet and furious, "With your baby." I wanted to defend Nia, out of habit. Instead, I stared at my shoes and whispered, "I don't know what I did wrong." Patrice's response was immediate. "Stop," she said. "Stop blaming yourself for someone else's choice." That was the first time someone put language around what I couldn't yet face. Abandonment is not a misunderstanding. It is an action. It is a door closing. Patrice stood and offered me her hand. "Come on," she said. "You still got a baby who needs her dad." I took her hand like a lifeline and stood up. Even though my knees didn't feel like mine, the hospital social worker helped me fill out forms I never imagined I'd fill out alone. Emergency custody paperwork, insurance forms. Who is the mother? Boxes that felt accusatory. I called my union rep from the mechanic shop and explained, voice cracking, that I needed time. My supervisor, Mr. Caldwell, didn't ask for details. He said, "Bring me the paperwork. We'll handle the rest." When he said it, I cried in the parking garage beside my car, because kindness can be unbearable when you're falling apart. My daughter stayed in the NICU for 26 days. I learned the schedule by heart. Rounds at 7. Feeding attempts, skin-to-skin time of her oxygen allowed. I kept a small notebook where I recorded her weight, like it was a stock market. Up 2 ounces, down 1, steady. Maribel taught me how to hold my hand still inside the incubator, so my daughter could wrap her fingers around one of mine. "She's learning from you," Maribel said. "That matters more than you know." I named her Layla, not because the name was trendy or sounded expensive, because my grandmother used to hum a song with that name while braiding hair on the porch, and it made me think of steadiness. Layla, my sister said it suited her. Strong, soft, stubborn. Nia's mother called once, a week after Nia disappeared, and her voice was sharp. "Where's my daughter?" she demanded. I stared at the NICU door and answered honestly, "I don't know." The silence on the line was heavy with judgment. Then she hung up. When Layla finally came home, the apartment felt too quiet. I had prepared like I was assembling a complicated engine. Crib set, bottles sterilized, a little box of preemie diapers lined up like tools. Patrice stayed the first weekend. She taught me how to swaddle without panicking. She also watched me flinch every time my phone lit up. "If she calls, I'll answer," Patrice said. I shook my head. "No," I said, surprised at myself with the firmness. "If she calls, I'll decide." Weeks became months. Nia never called. Not once. The number she had used went out of service. Her social media disappeared like she had been wiped clean. People told me different versions of comfort, and most of them made me feel worse. Maybe she'll come around. Maybe she's dealing with postpartum. Maybe it's the best. I nodded and smiled because that is what you do when you cannot afford to fall apart in public. But at night, when Layla slept, I sat on the kitchen floor and felt the shame crawl over me. I kept expecting a knock on the door. Not because I wanted Nia back exactly. More because my mind needed a storyline that made sense. Abandoned men are supposed to be villains or fools, and I didn't know which one I was. I replayed our marriage like a film strip. Nia's impatience when I talked about saving money. Her obsession with appearances, matching outfits, curated photos, always scanning rooms to see who. Noticed her. The way she corrected my grammar in front of people like I was a project. I had mistaken that for ambition. Patrice pushed me into legal action when I hesitated. "You need custody documented," she insisted. "Not just for you. So nobody can yank her later." I didn't want court. I didn't want conflict. I wanted sleep and a normal life, and a baby who would stop startling at loud noises. But Patrice was right. I filed for full custody in St. Louis County. The judge asked, "Where's the mother?" And I answered, "Absent." It felt like saying a death sentence, but it was only the truth. The judge granted temporary full custody while we searched for Nia to serve papers. When the clerk stamped the documents, I felt both relieved and nauseated. It was like signing a form that confirmed my life had changed permanently. Outside the courthouse, Patrice bought me a cinnamon roll from a nearby bakery that smelled like warm sugar. "Eat," she said. "You need fuel." I ate half, staring at passing cars, thinking, my daughter's mother is somewhere choosing not to be here. Layla grew into her lungs. Her cheeks filled out. Her cries became louder, more insistent. The sound of a child who believed somebody would come when she called. That belief was my daily job. I learned to do everything one-handed while holding her. I learned which grocery store aisle was quietest when she got overstimulated. I learned the pattern of her sleep, the tiny sighs she made when she finally gave in. I also learned my own limits. Pride is expensive. I started accepting help, in my building. An older man named Mr. Jameson lived across the hall. He was retired, always wearing clean sneakers, always carrying a newspaper like a shield. One day he saw me juggling a diaper bag and a wriggling baby and said, "You need a hand?" I hesitated. Then I said yes. Mr. Jameson held the door, then nodded at Layla. "Pretty baby," he said. "She got fighter eyes." I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I said. "She does." After that, he checked on us sometimes. Quiet support with no questions. The first year was survival. The second year was rebuilding. I got a promotion to lead mechanic, which meant more paperwork and less time under buses. But it paid enough to move us into a small duplex near a park with decent lighting and families who waved. Every Sunday, I took Layla to my father's old church, not because I suddenly became holy, but because a routine held me up. The choir's harmonies felt like hands on my shoulders. People would pinch Layla's cheeks and tell me, God kept her. I did not date. People tried to set me up anyway. Cousins, church mothers, co-workers who thought loneliness was an emergency. I said no politely. I didn't trust my judgment. I didn't trust my heart. Nia had been my sure thing, and she had vanished. So I focused on what I could see and measure. Layla's growth chart, my paycheck, the rent paid on time, the way the sun hit our kitchen table in the morning. I started collecting vinyl again, not as nostalgia, but as a reminder I still had a self. On Layla's second birthday, Patrice threw a small party in my backyard. She made a banner that said, "Too Fast," with a little bus drawn on it, because she said my life was buses and baby bottles. Layla smashed her cake with both hands and laughed like she had never known sorrow. Later that night, Patrice sat with me on the porch steps. "Do you ever think she's coming back?" she asked. I stared at the dark street. Sometimes, I admitted, but I don't know what I'd do if she did. The answer showed up in a way I didn't expect. In a community clinic waiting room, of all places. Layla had a lingering cough, and my pediatrician referred us for a follow-up. The clinic was in a converted building with faded posters and a fish tank that made the whole room smell faintly of algae. Layla sat on my lap, tracing the pattern on my work jacket. Across from us, a woman was reading a children's book aloud in a calm, steady voice, even though her own son kept interrupting. She looked up and smiled at Layla like children were welcome in her world. Her name was Simone Avery. She was a speech therapist, early 30s, hair cut in a neat, natural style, glasses that kept sliding down her nose. She had a habit of tapping her wedding ring finger, even though there was no ring there. I noticed because I used to do that too after Nia left, like my body needed to remember something my mind was trying to erase. Simone's son, Malik, offered Layla a sticker and said, "It's a dinosaur, but nice one." We talked in small sentences, the way strangers do when they are testing the safety of a conversation. When the nurse called my name, Simone said, "Good luck," like she meant it. I surprised myself by turning back before we went in. "If you're here next week," I said, "I owe your son a sticker trade." Simone laughed. "He'll hold you to it," she said. I walked into the exam room with Layla and felt something unfamiliar, a lightness that didn't demand anything from me. Simone and I became friends first. We met at the park on Saturday mornings where the swing squeaked and the air smelled like cut grass. She was particular about being on time. She hated when people chewed loudly. She also had a patience with children that made me wonder how somebody could be both strict and gentle. She asked about Layla's birth one day while we watched the kids chase bubbles. I told her the truth in a plain voice. Simone listened without interrupting. Then she said, "That was cruel." No excuses. No maybe. Just honest naming. When Simone and I started dating, it didn't feel like jumping off a cliff. It felt like stepping onto a bridge I helped build. She met Patrice early because Patrice was my reality check. Patrice watched Simone for a long time over dinner, then asked, "What do you want?" Simone didn't flinch. "A stable life," she said. "A partner who shows up. Kids who feel safe." Patrice nodded like she was reading a resume. Later, she pulled me aside and whispered, "She's not pretending." I breathed easier. By the time Layla turned 3, Simone was part of our daily rhythm. She helped Layla learn how to pronounce tricky sounds by turning practice into games. She left sticky notes in my lunch bag that said things like, "Drink water. You are not a machine." She also held boundaries like they were sacred. If I got quiet and tried to swallow feelings, she would say, "You don't get to disappear in your own house." It wasn't mean. It was firm. And it taught me something. Love that stays is not just emotion. It is behavior. 3 years after the hospital night, Layla had a follow-up appointment at the same medical center where she was born. It wasn't an emergency, just one of those scheduled check-ins for kids who started life in a NICU. I took off work early. Simone came with me, carrying snacks and a small toy bus for Layla because she liked matching my world. The hospital hallway looked the same as it always had. Polished floors, old artwork, the faint smell of disinfectant. My stomach still tightened anyway. I didn't plan to run into Nia. I hadn't pictured her face in a long time. In my mind, she had become a concept. Absence, silence, a decision. But as we rounded a corner near the lobby, I heard my name spoken in a voice I once knew better than my own. Darius. I stopped so abruptly Simone bumped into my shoulder. I turned, and there she was. Nia stood near the vending machines, holding a manila folder, her hair straightened, her makeup careful but slightly off, like she had done it fast. For a second, my body tried to time travel. I felt the old heat in my chest, the mixture of anger and longing and disbelief. But then Layla tugged my hand and asked, "Daddy, can we get pretzels?" And the present snapped into place. Nia's eyes moved from me to Layla, and something in her face tightened. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked past me, and that was the moment she froze. Because behind me was Simone, one hand resting lightly on Layla's shoulder like it belonged there. Nia's gaze locked on Simone, the way a person stares at a door they assume would stay open. Simone didn't flinch. She stood straight, calm, her eyes steady. Malik was with us that day. He was at school. But Simone still carried herself like a mother protecting a space. Nia's lips parted slightly. "You!" she whispered, not even finishing the sentence. I realized she had expected me to be alone. She had expected me to still be stuck in the story she left behind. Confused, begging, waiting. "Darius," Nia said again, louder this time, like volume could fix a gap. "I need to talk to you." Simone's fingers tightened once on my arm, a silent question. "Are you safe? Do you want this?" My instinct was to keep walking. I didn't owe Nia a conversation in the lobby, but I looked at Layla, at the way she leaned into Simone without hesitation, and I thought, I can't teach my daughter boundaries if I only practice avoidance. So I made a choice. I said, 5 minutes, right here. Nia's eyes flicked to Layla again, lingering on her face like she was trying to measure time by cheekbones. "She's big," Nia managed. Layla looked up at her, polite the way we raised her. "Hello," Layla said, then immediately asked me, "Can we get pretzels now?" Because children do not pause their needs for adult drama. Nia's throat moved like she swallowed something sharp. "I didn't know," she said, voice breaking. "I didn't know she was okay. I heard the lie inside it. She could have known." "You didn't ask," I said quietly. Not cruelly, just a fact. Nia flinched like the words hit her in the ribs. She gripped the folder tighter. "I was not, well," she said. "I made choices." Her eyes darted to Simone again. Simone didn't look away. "We're here for Layla's appointment," Simone said calmly. "If you have something important, say it. If not, let them go." Nia's face reddened. "Who are you?" she snapped. And the question was less about identity than territory. Simone answered without heat. "I'm the person who shows up." The sentence was simple, but it carried weight like a stone dropped into water. Nia's eyes widened, and I watched the realization crawl across her face. Simone knew. She knew the hospital story, the leaving, the silence. Nia looked back at me, searching for softness. "Darius," she whispered. "I didn't leave because of her." She nodded toward Layla, as if my daughter were the reason. My stomach clenched. "You left because you wanted to." I corrected. Nia took a breath, then held up the folder. "I came to sign papers," she said. signing away my rights. My brain stalled. I had been granted full custody years ago because she disappeared, but legal systems love clean endings. I had filed paperwork more than once to close the loop, and she never responded. Now she was here, 3 years later, with a folder, acting like she was doing something noble. Patrice's voice echoed in my head. Name it. Don't decorate it. Why now? I asked, why show up here? Nia's shoulders rose and felt like she was trying not to cry. My mother, she said. She's sick. She keeps asking about the baby. About you. Her eyes slid away. And I'm tired of running. That word, running, hit me harder than her apology would have, because that was what she did. Fled pressure, fled responsibility, fled any version of life that required endurance. Simone leaned slightly toward me and murmured, "We can do this through attorneys." Nia heard and winced, like she was being pushed out of the room again. I could have walked away. That was the other possible decision point. I could have told her to mail the papers and never speak to me again. But Layla stood between all of us, chewing on the edge of her sleeve, watching with curious caution. I thought about the day she would ask more questions than pretzels. I thought about the kind of truth I wanted to give her. Truth with structure, not chaos. So I said, sign what you came to sign. Then you leave. No scene. No promises. Just actions. Nia's eyes filled, but she nodded quickly, like she was grateful for any instruction. We walked to a small seating area near the lobby windows. The city outside looked bright and normal, which made the moment feel surreal. Nia sat, opened the folder, and her hands trembled. Simone stayed standing behind me, close enough that I could feel her warmth. Nia signed in jerky strokes. When she finished, she slid the papers toward me. "I'm sorry," she said, voice thin. "I didn't know how to be what you needed." I stared at the sign lines and felt something complicated. Not relief exactly, but closure with teeth. "You didn't know how to be what Layla needed," I corrected gently. Nia's face crumpled. "Can I see her?" she asked, and her eyes flicked to Layla like she wanted a photo for her conscience. Layla looked up at me, then at Simone, then back at me, like she was reading the room without understanding the words. I made my choice. "No," I said. "She's not an exhibit." Nia flinched, then nodded as if she expected it. "Okay," she whispered. She stood, smoothing her skirt, trying to gather dignity around herself. She looked at Simone, and something like envy tightened her mouth. "You win," Nia said. Simone's expression didn't change. "This isn't a contest," Simone replied. "This is a child's life." Nia's eyes darted away again, because accountability is harder to look at than a person. She stepped back as if she might say more, then stopped herself. When Nia turned to leave, Layla tugged my hand again. "Daddy, are we late?" she asked. My chest squeezed. "No," I said. "We're okay." Nia paused at the edge of the lobby and glanced back one last time. Her eyes landed on Layla, then on Simone behind me, then on my hand holding my daughter's. For a second, her face looked exactly like it did 3 years earlier, stunned, distant, as if she had woken up inside a life she didn't recognize. Then she walked out the automatic doors and disappeared into daylight. Layla's appointment went fine. The doctor smiled and called her a strong girl, and Simone laughed with genuine pride. But on the drive home, my hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Simone watched me for a moment, then said, "Talk to me." I exhaled slowly. I thought I would feel something bigger. I admitted. Anger. Triumph. Anything. Simone nodded. "Sometimes healing looks calm," she said. "Sometimes the loud part already happened." I swallowed hard and felt my eyes burn anyway. That night, after Layla fell asleep with her toy bus tucked under her arm, Simone and I sat at the kitchen table. The vinyl record on the turntable spun low in the background, an old Al Green album, soft and familiar. Simone traced the rim of her mug and said, "I'm proud of you." I shook my head. "I didn't do anything," I said. "I just kept going." Simone looked at me like I was being intentionally blind. "That is not nothing," she said. "You built a home from a hallway." A week later, Patrice came over and listened while I told her what happened. She sat very still, then let out a slow breath. She really came back to sign papers? Patrice said, after all that? I nodded. Patrice's eyes narrowed. And you said no to seeing Layla? She asked, testing me. I braced myself for criticism, but Patrice nodded once. Good, she said, because a child is not a bandage for an adult's guilt. She stood, kissed Layla's forehead, and whispered, You got a good daddy, baby. Over the next months, the legal process finished cleanly. My lawyer called it rare. Nia didn't contest anything. She didn't ask for visits. She didn't send gifts. Part of me waited for the other shoe, the dramatic return, the late-night phone call, the sudden demand to be forgiven, but nothing came. I realized something uncomfortable. Nia's disappearance wasn't a plot twist. It was a pattern. She wanted the relief of closing a file, not the work of rewriting her character. That truth hurt less than it used to, because I no longer tried to rescue her story. Simone and I married the following spring in a small ceremony in a community garden on the edge of the city. The air smelled like damp soil and tulips. Patrice stood beside me, dabbing her eyes, pretending she wasn't emotional. Mr. Jameson came in a clean blazer and offered a solemn nod like he was approving a repair job. Layla wore a yellow dress and sprinkled petals with serious concentration. When Simone said her vows, she didn't promise perfection. She promised consistency. I will be here, she said, even on the hard days. I believe her because she had already proven it. I didn't tell Layla the full story then. She was still small, still living in a world where Mom was a woman who braided her hair and read her books and reminded her to use please. Simone never forced the title. She earned it. Layla started calling her Mom Simone on her own, then eventually just Mom. The first time she did it, Simone blinked fast and looked away like she was protecting the moment from being ruined by tears. I pretended not to notice, but my throat tightened in gratitude. Once, 2 years after that hospital lobby, I got a message request from an unfamiliar account. It was Nia. The message was short. I heard she's doing well. I'm glad. No request. No apology. Just a sentence that sounded like someone trying to place a pebble on a grave and call it respect. I stared at the screen for a long time. I could have answered. I could have sent anger back like a boomerang. Instead, I deleted it. Not because she didn't deserve a response, but because my life was no longer built around her choices. Sometimes people ask me how I did it, how I raised a baby alone after being left in a hospital, how I trusted again, how I didn't turn bitter. I tell them the truth. I was bitter. I was ashamed. I blamed myself in quiet ways that didn't show on the outside. But each day, I chose one practical thing over one dramatic emotion. I filed the paperwork. I accepted help. I learned Layla's needs. I paid attention to who stayed. And 3 years later, when Nia froze at the sight of the woman behind me, I understood the life she abandoned did not collapse. It grew roots. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Closure is not the same as reconciliation. When Nia showed up with that folder, I didn't let the moment turn into a performance of forgiveness, because Layla's safety mattered more than Nia's emotions. And when Simone said, I'm the person who shows up, it wasn't a flex. It was a standard. Pay attention to who handles pressure by staying present and who handles it by disappearing. Your future is built on those patterns, not on promises. If you made it to the end, you understand what the story is really about. Not revenge, standards. If that hits home, like this video, share it with someone rebuilding their life. And subscribe for more first-person relationship/drama stories where choices have consequences and healing looks like real life. The end.